See me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, see something. I see you playing with your hair.
I was not prepared to be seen.
Did you hit record yet?
Hey, Kim. Yep. I'm on the phone, Kim. I'll be there in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, this is, so we're just finishing getting set up and they'll get started here in just a minute. Were you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll get started in just a minute.
We're getting, rebuilt.
No. Oh, yeah.
Most people call. So let's see, 2:30. Can we see who else is logged in? I see Mark Krabs.
If they indicate their name, we can. Otherwise,
Have a guess.
yeah, and we'll ask. I can step through who I see, and then ask anybody else to.
Got orange power.
Okay. Thank you. Can I get started?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, because we have to stop at 3:30.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's Eric Tade. We're going to go ahead and get started with the meeting. First thing we need to do is go ahead and figure out who all is called in, see if we have enough people for a quorum. So, who wants to start on the phone?
Francois
I can announce you. Okay.
Or Kathy?
Kathy Gurley or Kathy Chandler?
Kathy Chandler Henry.
Okay, Chandler. Okay. Who else?
Mark Krabs here.
Mark. Okay.
Yeah, this is Brian. I'm on the phone. I'll be there in a couple minutes.
Okay. Brian.
5.
Bob Brickett. Carl Stevens.
Carl Counts. Anybody else on the phone?
Dale Branson, non-voting member.
Okay. I have two.
Cam Monsees with OIT.
Okay. Yes.
Randy Leaning, Signals Analytics.
1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5. Who else did you get us?
So we have Kathy, Mark, Brian, me, Carl.
Yeah.
And then I heard Bob, but that probably wasn't Bob Pfeiffer, was it?
It's Bob Ricketts. Yeah. So we could get
Don
started.
Mascherano, thank you.
Oh, okay, Don. So that gets us 6. So we're still short of a quorum. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started. We'll skip. Was that Bob Pfeiffer?
No, that's their
All right,
person.
Okay. All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and skip the approval of the March 17 meeting minutes since we don't have a quorum. And once we get a quorum, we'll go back to that and approve those. The first topic is to welcome Kristen to the team. She'll be supporting us. And do you want to introduce her, Kim?
Sure. I want to introduce Kristen Keller. She started on April 5th as our project coordinator, doing kind of a lot of the duties that John Davey performed last year, but even additional ones. She is actually a position that will be expended through the life of the grant, so we aren't going to lose her in 9 months, and the intent is to roll that position into program support, hopefully if funding can be secured through OIT post the grant in 2017.
Perfect.
Yep.
Did you want to say something, Kristen?
You might just tell them your background.
I guess I come from oil and gas most recently, and before that, nonprofit development, so a little bit all over the place. Not a Colorado native, but here for good. I guess that's all I have. Excited to be here.
Anybody got any questions for Kristen? All right. No questions for Kristen. We're going to move on to our first net update. And we'll go ahead and start off with Kim because Brian's not quite here yet.
Sure. Okay, so I wanted to give you all an update from the biannual SPOC meeting. FirstNet's established a cadence of twice a year, so we met last week in Virginia. I sent you all a number of the PDFs of some of the presentations I thought would be of relevance to this group. Had lots of information at that body's group, and the first one is that the RFP due date has been extended to May 31st. FirstNet indicates that they don't believe this will push out their timeline, and they still are hoping for a November 1st-ish target award date for their contract, or to award their vendor and then contract with the vendor. And it sounds like Doug Harder is on the phone with FirstNet, so if anybody has any questions about that piece or any of these other things, I'm sure Doug, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I could defer to him as well. So the state plans, they actually had a section on state plans, and I think I shared that with all of you. FirstNet intends to do a portal once they've selected their partner. That portal will be two-sided. It will have a public access side, which is really for any potential user of FirstNet to understand the services FirstNet would offer and their value proposition. I think we'll learn more about that and what that's going to look like in the coming months. And then on the other side of that portal, so to speak, will be a secured portal, which is where the state plan access will live. And we don't know what information will be secured versus not secured in that side of the portal, and in terms of who will have access to see what portions of the state plan, because FirstNet doesn't know, there may be some elements of the plan that they develop with their partner that are proprietary. One thing we also learned with regard to the state plans is that FirstNet is hopeful that their partner will want to use public assets, and I believe some of their RFP asked them to answer questions with regard to that. However, one thing that they stated is that any discussion about use of public assets in the future network in a state would not occur unless a state opted in. So, Doug Harder, did I understand that correctly from Rich Reed?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what he said. That's as of course we believe it today.
Okay, very good. So that was a bit of information that we had not learned until we were at the meeting last week. I think there will be lots of opportunities to discuss state plans in more detail at the May 19th meeting, and to remind everybody that May 19th meeting will be a face-to-face with this governing body and FirstNet leadership in Arvada. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So they are providing us information on state plans as they gather it, but again, until they actually have a partner, we don't know what that's going to look like. We just, it's speculation to some degree. So another item they discussed was data collection. And the data collection, they indicated that they are open to taking additional updates on our data collection through September 30th of 2016. That would not inform anything to do with the RFP and award selection, but it possibly could provide additional information to FirstNet and their partner as they develop state plans. There's no commitment of how that information would impact state plans, though. And then the last bit of information we learned was from the NTIA team, and they were last month I had told you a different acronym. It sounds like they've cemented their acronym of State Alternative Plan Program, or SAP, S-A-P-P. And that program I provided you the documentation on as well. There's going to be 5 elements that the NTIA is going to look for a state to be, or 5 criteria that a state's going to have to meet in order to step through the alternative planning approval process with them. They are going to be opening at some point, we hope soon, a public comment period around that process. We also expect the FCC to publish NPRM or something, or some sort of comment process around the interoperability requirements. NTIA to date has indicated that it's possible that, and likely that, the staff comments to the STAP program would not be allowable under SLGP. So if Colorado desired to provide comments, we will have to do that internally or identify alternative funds. NTIA has not taken an official position on that, but they seem to be leaning that way in terms of non-official conversation with our federal program officer. So, Brian or Ed or Kristen, anything else from the SPOC meeting in terms of high-level information that you can recall?
No, you covered it well.
Yeah. Anything else, Brian?
So,
There was actually quite a bit of information from the CTO team. I do want to caveat that. Really good information. I'll upload those and send you all the links so you can go in and look at those decks as well. A lot of information about the application and device ecosystem, how they're going to go about defining public safety grade, some information on cybersecurity too. So,
Was there much conversation from the other spots as far as the potentials for opting out and if their states are doing any dual track planning or anything along those lines, Brian?
Most of those conversations were informal, but they were valuable. I think probably the best way to put it is there are a lot of states that would love to be doing what we're doing, but they have no money. So I talked to a lot of states that were asking us about the work Signals has done, how much did it cost, that type of thing. A lot of folks would like to be, the RFI. We're very eager to hear what the responses were to the RFI. But almost all of them said, unfortunately, we just don't have any money to do what you guys are doing. So while I think there's a lot of states trying to do as much as they can. We're probably one of the only states going as far as we're going with this simply because we have the resources to do it. So that said, I think there is some increased opportunities to work with other states. We've had some conversations with states all across Midwest, East Coast, down south that are interested in working with us as they can. And I think there are a lot of concerns. It's been interesting to talk to other states and see that everyone's concerns are a little bit different. Everyone has concerns, but they're all a little bit different. And I think that that's a good thing because I think it shows the disparity across the country. And the concerns that the folks in Florida are going to have are a lot different than we have. Their politics are different, their geography is different, their climate's different, their people are different, their expectations are different. I think we're continuing. I always look to try to get folks together and talk through these things together. And I'm hoping that maybe we might have a chance to do some more of that. Historically, my efforts have been kind of, a lot of folks just don't have the ability to do what we want to go as far as we're going. So
it'd be safe to say we're as far or further out with our comparative or alternative planning as anybody else?
Yeah, I don't know if there will be anyone that goes as far as we do.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian or Kim for the SPOC meeting?
We do have a quorum now too.
We do have a quorum?
Yeah.
So since we do have a quorum and inevitably we always have somebody drop off the phone, let's back up to item 1 and approval of the March 17th meeting minutes. Somebody want to make a motion to approve those or have any questions about them?
So moved.
Do you want to second that?
Carl seconds.
All right. All in favor of approval of the meetings, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Meeting minutes are adopted. And we'll go back down to the FirstNet meeting, Colorado Governing Board.
So we are confirmed to meet with the governing body on May 19th. That'll be at 1 p.m. at the Arvada Center. The City of Arvada is graciously hosting the governing body and the FirstNet leadership and consultation team at a lunch starting at 12 o'clock. I've sent the governing body proper the invitation to lunch in the meeting. We are asking that the lunch be just the governing body, again, due to the graciousness of the City of Arvada. The meeting itself will start at 1, is open to anyone, and will also be web broadcast. So we will provide that link to register on our Eventbrite site here pretty quickly. From the board's perspective, if you desire not to work through the website, just email me or Kristen directly to let us know about lunch and or the meeting, whether you plan to attend in person or via web, so we can account for that as well. And we'll try to firm up those numbers if we haven't heard from people in the week before, because we do have to secure the lunch number for the City of Arvada. The other thing that we need to do, and we won't have time, unfortunately, during this meeting, because we have to be done at 3:30 due to Aurora's meeting starting immediately after this meeting. We need to discuss the agenda and specific content. FirstNet has an agenda items I think they intend to cover, but if there's specific discussion items that we want to talk about, perhaps more around state plan and alternative planning and what that relationship looks like. FirstNet, during our SPOC meeting, did to commit to, they said any state that goes with an alternative plan, they are committed to being a partner with to make that plan and that network successful. So that could be good conversation for us to have as well. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, as Kim said, I'd like to, and we can work, over the next month through emails and so forth on this, but I really want to structure this meeting well, and so we get a lot out of it. And so what I want from the other board members is to hear from you guys what questions you want asked. And I want to emphasize that this is a great opportunity for us to have the FirstNet leadership here and ask questions to them face to face. And I think, we've obviously had a lot of issues, historically with, trying to expand the AdCom project and so forth. I think, to be frank, that ship has sailed, in terms of expanding the network. And I think we need to turn our focus on moving forward and just, kind of looking at what we're going to be tasked with in the next 18 months, which is, the state plan and making that decision. And so I'd like the board to start thinking about, what are the critical elements you as a leader for your discipline or your representative group, what you want answered from FirstNet? What are the things that you as a leader need to know or want to know in this state plan before you make a decision that says, yes, FirstNet's plan is good, or no, we're going to do our own thing. We're starting to put together kind of a process for how we're going to make that decision amongst the state, and obviously the governing body plays a critical role in that. But I think this is a chance for us to have input to FirstNet leadership before things get cemented. They won't have chosen a partner yet. To say things like, this is the information we want. One of the questions Kim kind of mentioned earlier is the security. They talked about some of the technical details of the state plan being limited to only a handful of people in the state. I have some concerns about that. It's one thing for me to try to explain to the fire chiefs or the police chiefs what the technical, coverage looks like or something else. But, to me, it's another thing to be able to actually show them and say, here's maps, here's data, here's information, versus me having to say, here's my interpretation of those maps, or here's my interpretation of that data. And so things such as that, pricing, what are some of the specifics we want to know about pricing? Not just pricing today or pricing tomorrow. There's been a lot of conversation about, if you opt out, then you're stuck with let me rephrase that. If you opt in, there's no capital costs. But what are the ongoing costs? What are upgrades going to look like? Obviously, the belief is that that'll be worked into your user fees. But what does that mean? Is there a cap on user fees? Or are we going to see 10% increases every year for the next 20 years? I don't know. And I don't think FirstNet knows the answer to that either yet. So it's not like we're asking them for answers. But start thinking about the types of information and the key pieces that you need to be able to say, I represent rural Colorado, or I represent municipalities, I represent law enforcement. What do you need to be able to say on behalf of law enforcement, here's my recommendation, in or out? Because this is a chance for us to talk with FirstNet leadership about that. So really want everyone to start thinking about that. And, we probably have a couple of minutes. If there's some key thoughts, on that, we've probably got a few minutes here today that we can talk through that. About what you guys want to hear, and what, knowing that we have 2 hours plus of FirstNet leadership here captive, what do you guys want to engage with them? Because I have committed to them that we're not going to hit them up with anything out of left field or blindside them. We'll send them an agenda and send them kind of these key points, and even if we have some questions that we pre-formatted questions that we'll send them, because we don't want to hit them upside the head and turn it into a kind of a blindside. So I don't know if there's any conversation we want to have now about that, or just wait to email.
So I have what's probably a stupid question.
Yes.
But is there any discussion or any possibility of any kind of a hybrid plan versus right now, it's all in or all out kind of a deal. Is there any potential for a hybrid plan? Because in Colorado, I-70, I-25, yeah, it probably works under what FirstNet's looking at right now. The rest of Colorado may not work as well. And if we could, you know, would there be a potential, say, we're in on this section of the state, but to cover rural Colorado, we think we could get there and build our own, you know, network and then link it into FirstNet faster than FirstNet can just focus on Colorado and figure out our rural solution. So can there be a hybrid solution? Or is there any thought process around that even?
So I think Kim kind of touched on that. I think, you know, that they have got enough pressure on that. There's been enough folks that have said, why don't we look at this? So I think they've kind of changed their stance and they are open to that. I guess my concern, as Kim said, is they won't even talk to us about that until after we opt in.
Which is crazy because you don't have the information.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And I think that's a valid question to FirstNet leadership, is to say, you know, rather than force us to not even talk about that until we opt in, we want to talk about that as part of the state plan. So we want to see what that looks like as part of the state plan to do that. So yeah, that's something a lot of folks, a lot of states still continue to ask for is, you know, let's not be utopian and think that you guys can accomplish all those goals in this short amount of time frame. We can do this quicker together. So, yeah.
So I think that's one thing I would like to add to our agenda for the consultation meeting, as long as there's no objection from the rest of the board. Any objections?
No, and this is Paula. I agree with that, and maybe we set up another call just to talk about this, but to add on to what you just said, what if we opt in, and then can we opt out later if we don't like how it's going, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the answer to that, Paula, is no. But we'll put that down, because I think it is. To me, you know, we kind of rephrase that as, what's the performance level? Well, what's the guaranteed performance level of this network? You know, first in the RFP, they have some fairly substantial punitive payments or penalties that if a provider doesn't meet their performance guidelines, you know, it could reach up into the billions of dollars. That FirstNet has the ability to penalize the provider. But I think that, you know, where that to me, that's a great start. But what's behind that? You know, how do those penalties get kicked in? And, you know, is it the situation where, you know, is it almost advantageous in some cases for the partner to accept certain penalties, knowing that it might get them more down the line? You know, I remember, you know, 20 years ago when I was trying to sell some software to oil and gas companies, it was cheaper for them just to pay fines than to invest in technology to avoid the fines. You know, and it you know, is that a situation? So I think to me, it's rather, we frame it as, if we opt in and in 5 years, things have just fallen off the rails. I mean, not aren't going well, but things are completely falling off the rails. What happens? And I think that's a very valid question. Perfect.
Brian, this is Joe Ribeiro.
Yeah.
Might be a little late in the process or too fast coming upon this meeting, but is there a measure for switching cost? Is there a difference if we have our own versus the FirstNet?
Yes, there will be a difference. And, like, you know, if we opt out, we still have to connect back to the nationwide core. And that's, I think that's been, you know, that's a fairly accepted, you know, issue. But the key is, like you said, what are those costs? Is it just simply a fee cost? Are they going to charge network access costs? And at this point, they've said they don't know. But again, those are costs we need to look at. And I think for the 911 community, that's something that's really important, because, you know, the long-term success for this thing to reach its full potential, the 911 community has to be fully invested in this, both from a technical perspective and an operational perspective. At a technical perspective, that means the 911 centers interact with this network at a very technical level. What are those costs going to be? What are the costs of the 911 center going to be to physically connect for basic transport? What are the cybersecurity costs going to be for a 911 center to interact with this thing? You know, I think, as everyone on this call is aware of, you know, we've got 911 centers in the state that can barely keep the doors open. And yet we're going to tell them, oh, all of a sudden you've got to comply with all of these cybersecurity, you know, levels that most states and Fortune 500 companies have a hard time complying with. So, you know, what are we going to do about that? So, yeah, I think that those are very, very valid questions too.
And I suppose that's both at a state level and a local level.
Yes.
So it's a very thorough answer. But as Kim keeps reminding us, we have to be done hard to stop at 3:30. So anybody else have any other questions that we can provide a very brief answer to on that subject?
I will propose to the board a couple of maybe phone call 1-hour working sessions that we have in the next couple of weeks. If you can hop on, great. If not, we'll immediately send the information out and you can respond to it and try to come up with a board vetted list of topics and questions to Chief, if that works.
That'll work great.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's great.
So let's move on. Let's update on our RAN planning update and working groups.
Yeah, so the state assumed RAN planning update, because FirstNet pushed their due date out, we actually have pushed our RFI due date out to July 1st. That gives now anybody who might respond a month beyond FirstNet's due date. We also published our questions. I expect them actually to be on our website today, and we included a link to the question and answer. I will send that to you if you have any interest in listening to that question and answer period. It was about a 25-minute call with various people. We let it be anonymous, so people were not obligated to tell us who or where they were calling in from. We actually had a lot of you either on the board or other groups, and so we appreciate that participation as well. And when we get those responses back, obviously we'll be synthesizing them and determining how they can be shared. They are protected. We are not going to disclose any specific information related to who responded to the RFI. We want to keep that confidential through the entire state plan decision process because it's technically procurement sensitive material. So.
Perfect. Any questions?
On the working group, we're pleased to share that the business plan and technical working groups have been meeting on a regular cadence for about a month and a half. Ed kicked off the operational working group last month, and then they were invited to participate in the technical working group this week as we talked about the CTTs, which are FirstNet's consultation task teams. Between those groups, we're going to ask for 5 volunteers from within the state to participate with FirstNet at a regional level to understand the material, understand their ask around quality of service, priority, and preemption and the framework they've developed, and then to bring that information back to stakeholders in the state. So we'll work through that with that group. And then project updates. I do want to call your attention to, Ed, if you can go to the RFP summary document, possibly. It should just be, if you close that agenda really quickly. Yeah. And then it should be at the bottom there. The bottom left. Yep. So I shared with all of you, Signals Analytics did a great job of giving their perspective of the pluses and the positives and then the concerns about the RFP that is out. And then the reason it's taken us a little bit of time is because FirstNet has had a very robust conversation through a question and answer process. And so that document has been made available for all of you. If you have questions, please take time to review it. Let us know. We don't really have the time to go into great detail on it. Randy, is there anything you want to call out specifically for them to look at?
No, I think it's, it has a lot of factual summary and stuff that's, focused on the state. And we've also gone through their GIS data and, there's some interesting insight there. And they also project a very large market, which is larger than I think we believe and most people would believe. But sort of the psychology behind that is, we don't really know what the motivation is. It may be just to get the vendors to push back and say, no, actually, we think it'll be this.
Okay. So that document is there for you, and then Ed, if you close that, one other document I want you guys to see is Randy and I developed an alternative flow chart, and that flow chart is a draft version. We will probably continue to call it draft because we don't know what other things might impact it. But if you look through that, it steps through the requirements related to and then we related to the alternative planning process, and then we refer you to the actual section in the legislation if you have an interest in reading about that. So thanks to Randy for helping us get that together, and that gives you an understanding of at the points where the state can say yes or no, or is successful or not successful, what the end result might be. Very high level at this point, though. So that's and then Randy, do you want to just, the Model 7, we have a model on our non-SLIG activities, a coverage model that we will try and talk with you all. Likely, it won't be until the June meeting now, because of timing, but we will be stepping through internally in our program to work on some of that, and we'll show you that. It'll probably align well with as we have RFI responses too. So that's all. I'll turn it back to you, Chief.
All right, good. I'll turn it over to Ed.
All right.
All right, let me try and give you a quick overview. So we've been to 63 of 64 counties and 2 tribes. If I die, I'm going to get to that last county by our next meeting. We are on slate to be in all the big shows here in the state, which is the Emergency Medicine and Trauma Conference, National EMS Safety. We're going to be at the Sheriff's in May, CML in June, CACP. Thank you, Joe, for setting that up for us. That'll be in June as well. We'll be at the 99th Annual Colorado State Firefighters Convention, CCI, throughout the summer. And we are on the docket for the Fire Leadership Conference. We're going to bring a session on virtual and augmented reality and talk about how FirstNet fits into that. And we have been doing a lot of shows. I'll let everybody else speak for themselves. I spoke at IWCE about the Wildlife Checkpoint, and I just came back from the 5th International Fire Behavior and Fuel Conference. I'm also slated to be at the Wireless Infrastructure Show on the 24th in Dallas, and MRA for the Mountain Rescue Association. We've almost done all of the major conferences in search and rescue in the past year, which is really cool. We've been talking about emerging technologies, and that's really hitting a nerve with folks. Please consult our website. Everything that we're doing is out there. We make sure that it's available, and we encourage you to come. And then also, Kim, is there anything you wanted to highlight that you've been up to, Brian?
No, I've been invited to speak at New Mexico's State FirstNet Conference in May to talk about the activities around our demonstration networks. So I'll be going to Albuquerque in mid-May. So it's kind of great that we've got, some credibility with our peers across the different states in order to share information.
And while you have the floor, can you talk about the Radio Summit?
Oh, yeah. So the Radio Summit, we have a session for a half an hour the morning of the second day. The Radio Summit is on the 5th of May, which is the Thursday after the Tuesday of our XPS LTE, which Ed will talk about. That's a statewide LMR summit that is in its 3rd year. And we are pleased to share that actually for that event, we have scheduled Mark Olszewski, who's the Director of Applications for FirstNet, and he's going to talk with that group, about 170 people, specifically about FirstNet's QPP framework. So.
XPS LTE is going to be the same week, and that is on May the 3rd. It's from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. This is actually your last opportunity to sign up. We're going to keep registration open until this coming Tuesday, but we really recommend that you, if you can, come. If you can't, send somebody. This is an event to showcase and highlight LTE technology that's transforming public safety communications. We've got 15 vendors from all over the country, and they're going to do all kinds of different things, anything from antennas to devices to applications. We even got some of the companies that are startups that came out of the DHS Emerge conference. Some really, really, really exciting stuff. Even Mutual Link is going to bring the Recon glasses where we can see the heads-up display, and it'll do the streaming video. So please sign up for that. You can find it on our website. There is a banner with pictures. Go to that second picture, click it, and it'll take you to Eventbrite. Get signed up. Just in closing, we're still moving with the refresh of the website. We're doing marketing and newsletter each month. The marketing, as we have different events, we're just slammed. We've got so much going on. We're thankful to have Kristen, and now we can start to maybe catch up on some stuff. And also the online training, we will have that finished here shortly. With Kristen on, we'll be able to put project plans and keep on those project plans. So anyway, thank you for bearing with us. If you have any specific questions, please don't hesitate to contact.
Do you want to announce the dates of the next 3 LTE trainings real quick?
Yeah.
So May 11th is in Fort Collins. It's the LTE training that Emil Olbrich hosted in Denver. It will be webcast, and it's on our YouTube channel as well. May 18th is in Pueblo, and June 28th is in Rifle. And then we'll be doing the rest of the all hazards regions. We are going to hit every region in the state to ensure local stakeholders don't have to travel to see that.
And email has given us all the dates. We've contacted everyone. I just have to get on the phone now and just make sure that we have those dates secured. But we've got a 2 or 3 county buffer. So if one county can't do it, we'll just move to the next county for that date.
All right, and I know everybody always has the best intentions, Ed, but can you send out a reminder to the rest of the board for the May 3rd link?
Absolutely.
Because I know everybody thinks they'll go on the website and register and they'll forget about it. So if we can send that reminder on the
We'll buy you lunch, so.
That's right.
Free food and a reminder. That's all you get.
It'll be fun.
And for this group only, if you happen to forget and show up, we'll still let you.
Yeah, we will feed you.
Exactly.
All right, AdCom. I don't think I heard Joel on.
He's not going to be on today.
Okay. So I did have a question on AdCom. I don't know if you know, Brian. Bill may know too. Have we seen much testing that being done on that site? Because originally, that was designated as the site for testing new equipment on the FirstNet network.
Limited. So I think GD just finished building. So GD paid to completely renovate the AdCom basement, which for those of you that were in the AdCom basement, it was no small task. And with that whole purpose of basically turning it into kind of like a lab where anyone that wants to come in and test out equipment, it looks fantastic. So I think that's going to help. I think AdCom's had a resource problem. It's a lot of work. And but they are doing some limited testing. We've turned them on with Fidium. I know Emel's done some work with a company that has a cell range extender. So kind of like you put a little box in a window and it extends the coverage into the building, kind of like a cheap BDA essentially. So I think they are doing some of that, and we're trying to work with them to get more. It's just a matter of resources at the AdCom level, trying to keep up with all they got going on. So,
and just as a side note, we have one of those. The company that Brian's talking about is called Selfie, and we have actually set up one of their units at our office at OIT, and we are actually getting band class 14 that far away from the AdCom network.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the latency is not great, but it's
temporary test device.
Yeah. So it's
good, though.
Pretty cool stuff. Yeah. So I think we're starting to get there, and I think having GD finish up that the innovation center is going to really help and have some of their resources. So
we were also invited today. FirstNet wants to use our XPS event to try and see if there are any KLCs they can get from AdCom, since it's using the AdCom network. And so we'll find out next week. So to your point, Chief, about testing and benefiting FirstNet, that information will kind of be an ad hoc benefit of doing that event.
And if everything works out well, we should have about 70 devices of all sorts running on that one cell sector on that day. So that'll be a good, robust test.
No, I don't know. Does anyone know? Is DIA up yet? You might know.
I don't know. I know every time I talk to them, I'm like, oh, we're almost there. So.
Do you know? It's not up yet.
Not up yet.
Not up yet.
I think.
That's what I always hear. That's what I always hear every week. It's right there.
It is the airport. So,
there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in that whole deal. So let's move on from there. Unless anybody has anything else on AdCom. All right, Brian, legal issues.
Haven't done a whole lot of work on this. It has been a lot of work to do. We are anticipating, as Kim mentioned, notices from both the NTIA and the FCC. We're still waiting to see, as Kim also mentioned, the allowability for the SLGP funds. One of the things we have been talking about, Bob brought this up, Ken Fellman, who is a well-respected telecom attorney here in town, he was the mayor of Arvada for a while, and was the legal counsel to CML. So there's some conversations about how we can get Ken involved in this, and that's one of the things CML is looking at, potentially covering the costs for Ken to be the official legal representative for CML. We've also talked to CCI about, basically having him become the legal representative for both, local, for counties and municipalities on this. Unfortunately, Ken decided to go on vacation to Italy for like 3 weeks. So I think he's just getting back today. So he promised me that as soon as he got back, he would kind of figure out what that looks like. We kind of gave him a scope of work about what it might look like. And so for him to scope it out and then work with CML and CCI to cover the costs of that. We still have the AG's office engaged and keep them up to speed. And like I said, once we see the notices from the FCC and the NTIA on the opt-out process, I would anticipate the legal activity will increase on it. So.
And we have money set aside for legal services, SLGP allowable. And so it is under SLGP our intent to have him do a thorough review of the legislation, all of FirstNet's legal interpretations, understanding Colorado law, and then providing that input back to CML, CCI, and all of you to understand his Colorado interpretation of it.
Yeah. So, for example, is there TABOR implications with either an opt-in or opt-out? Yeah. We don't know. If the governor says we're in, are there TABOR implications in terms of that? We don't know. I don't know of anyone that really knows TABOR completely. So, and it seems to shift day by day and jurisdiction by jurisdiction. But yeah, so that type of thing, which is allowable under the grant, for us to really take it and say, okay, how does the actual legislation fit within Colorado's home rule structure and statute? So that's one of the things we'll be working on. So hopefully.
Great. About city and county representatives.
Yeah, we have those. Our legal working group we put together does have city and county representation on there. And again, that was kind of that point, was we're trying to figure out how to get a unified voice for both the county and municipal level as we address some of the legal issues, for both paths moving forward. It'd be nice to be able to have that single voice that can represent local interests.
And if Ken's work can then inform that group, that's the thing, is that group doesn't have the time or the bandwidth to do that analysis.
Yeah.
So that's the intent, is for him to do analysis, and then the AG's office can benefit from it and look at it from a state's perspective.
Yeah, because the city and county attorneys we've had on our legal working group are working city and county attorneys, so they have their hands full of day-to-day stuff that goes on in cities and counties. And the AGs we have on this are quite busy with various attorney general type activities that seem to go on in the state. So that's our goal, is to be able to offload some of the grunt work, to use an unglorified term. So that we, really, that if we can get that, real, like Kim said, that analysis done, then that would free up, the actual folks that work at the city and county state level, just to take that and kind of process it and say, okay, what do we need? Here's a red flag. This looks good. Here's where we need more investigation, that type of thing. So.
Okay, perfect. Old business. Who wants to cover funding for alternative?
Yeah, so, this is kind of more of a long-term placeholder, and I do want to discuss it a little bit, not just for funding, but as this progresses, I think, those of us that have been involved with this for a long time, and everyone on this board has been there quite a while too. We're getting to the point where this thing is starting to have some structure. As I said, we'd hoped to kind of build out this state sooner than later. That didn't quite happen as we hoped. So, we kind of need to move on and look at what's going to happen. And that future really is kind of set. These state plans are coming. The RFP is out there. That process is not going to stop absent some type of federal lawsuit, which I doubt. So, I think we have to look at this from a state perspective and say, okay, well, what are our options as we look at this? And obviously, if we opt in, I think there still are some needs at a statewide level. I'm not going to say state level, but a statewide level. And we're working with that internally through our state budget process to say, hey, even if we opt in, we're still going to need people to coordinate this. We're going to need kind of an account executive, so to speak, that represents Colorado's interests to FirstNet. But if we look at, if we were to opt out, this is a large effort. I think I've said from day one, this is an uphill climb. This is not a trivial thing to do if we opt out. And we got to start thinking about funding that and also structuring that. We need to start putting some serious thought into, okay, if we do opt out, who is we? Is it the state on behalf of everyone that builds and operates this thing? Is it some kind of authority? Is it a nonprofit? And depending on where we look at that, there's a good chance we might need some statutory support for that. Which, as I think we all are aware of, you don't want to hit the legislature up at the last hour and say, oh, hey, by the way, we need to create a new authority for public safety. That's not going to go over very well. We need to grease those skids long before, that comes into play. So these are some serious conversations we need to start having, not just about FirstNet's coming, but what are the potential ways FirstNet can be implemented. One of them is a much cleaner path. Well, we'll fully admit that. One of them is a very difficult path. That difficult path might be the path we want to choose. And so I think we need to start having some difficult conversations about that and about the structure of things and getting some ideas about how we move forward. And looking at that, no one wants to talk about money, but money is part of that. Tim and Ed and Kristen and I do have to make money to support our families, unfortunately. I'd love to be able to say I work for free, but I don't. And there could be other resources we need. And how do we do that? How do we divide up that pot? Who pays what? You know, how can we separate things from in-kind contributions to actual, hey, we need cold hard cash to pay salaries and to rent office space or you know, hire consultants, that type of thing. So these are conversations, you know, again, we're not going to talk about this today, probably not, you know, with the May meeting being with FirstNet, but I'm probably going to hit up starting in June that we start having these conversations in earnest at this level so that we can get ahead of it and we can make the recommendations to those above us and those elected officials rather than them making the recommendations to us.
All right. I don't see any other old business on there. Do we have any new business? Anyone? Fine.
I'm trying to think. I don't. I can't think of anything new.
Bill, you got anything?
Public comment.
Hey, we're open here.
But you have to come to the table. So
You're at home.
Come
Bill.
I'll introduce myself. My name is Bill Malone. I'm here today as a citizen of Aurora. But it's interesting. I appreciate Aurora's beautiful building and hosting this meeting. I just want to say 46 years ago, I took my first public safety test for the city of Aurora to be a firefighter. And I'm still, to some extent, tied into public safety. I even served on this committee prior to leaving AdCom when I retired or semi-retired. I'm very involved in FirstNet because I believe in public safety, I believe in Colorado, and I believe in Aurora. And I'm concerned that throughout this entire process, based on my experience, while I was at AdCom working with some very outstanding people, we were able to build the first operational live public safety system on the 4G system, on LTE system, on the under an spectrum management lease agreement with FirstNet. But I tell you seriously, what I'm concerned about as a person that still believes in public safety and believes in Aurora, matter of fact, the chief and I worked together years ago, is that FirstNet has been focused on one thing and one thing only, all the way to this date for this RFP, and that is to lock down a huge, gigantic commercial carrier agreement contract that locks in all public safety, not just mobile data like we're doing today, LMR, next gen, 911, everything. And I'm concerned about that. I don't believe in having all your eggs in one basket, and I don't believe in the federalization of local services. But I also can tell you from my experience with FirstNet, while I think that they're trying to do the best job they can with a big task to undertake, is that that focus has had very, very little input from public safety, locally, at the state level, and nationally. And I believe I can prove that beyond a shadow of doubt to anybody. And I think it's noteworthy that no one in Congress, when they have a hearing on FirstNet, calls in any active public safety personnel. I don't know of one time they've been called in. So to this day, I'm still concerned that FirstNet is moving along. When I heard Kim say that at the SPOC meeting even, you were told that the only local assets that might be used in the system going forward is if you opt in. And you can't do certain things, make certain decisions without opting in. That is exactly the top-down, no input, definitely not from public safety, not from elected officials at the local level or at the state level. It is strictly to do what FirstNet has, and the end of all things is to build a massive national communication network on a carrier-based backbone. And FirstNet has allowed very little to no input from public safety that I'm aware of, it, not only in Colorado. When we built the first operational system, we ran into nothing but difficulties, quite frankly, quite honestly, with FirstNet. We tried to build out in the Denver metro area to expand it and let people experiment with it. We have lost 4 years of opportunity because FirstNet would not allow, in my opinion, the AdCom system to go forward and to allow other people in the metro area so that a governmental system could be tested and proven because it wasn't a carrier-based system. Even though we said all along the carriers have to be an extremely important and part and participle of the solution. But I am concerned that state and local government has been overlooked by FirstNet. And I believe that the board of FirstNet has made decisions that are more in the, I think, in the benefit of getting done their agenda rather than what's necessary for public safety. So I know you're short on time, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It was just ironic that yesterday was that 46th anniversary. It was good to see the chief again. But I appreciate the opportunity to come and say that. I'm very concerned. The technology is great. It's wonderful for public safety. It'll make a definite improvement in this country. The way that FirstNet is approaching it, in my opinion, on totally a lockdown carrier-based system is the wrong approach. And I hope that the city of Aurora, as a home rule city like Denver and every other city, knows that they have the right to make their own choice too. That FirstNet can't make this from a top-down choice upon them. But I know you're sort of
No, let me try to respond for the board, and anybody disagrees, clearly chime in. But I think, you know, that's been a focus of this group, is looking at not only what has been told to us, but then the actions of FirstNet as well. I think that's some of our frustration. While a lot of the wording and the marketing has been around partnership and local control and all that, the actions have been far more dictatorial than partnership-based. And I think the latest action of, well, we won't talk to you about your state plan or any public assets or what it'll look like until you tell us you're in or out, is exactly the opposite of everything that's been presented. We've maintained from the very beginning one of the greatest challenges in Colorado is that Colorado is a home rule city. It isn't a city where the governor can just sign something and says, yep, everybody in the state's doing it and we're going to do it because we know how well that works in the state. And the fact that, you know, we want to build a system that's built around public safety. We want to work in partnership with not only FirstNet, but all of our other public safety agencies throughout the state and create that opportunity there. And we value local control, yet we haven't seen actions of that. We've been promised a lot of stuff, but then at every turn, the actual action steps we've seen have been, if not contradictory, definitely not congruent with the statements made. And so I think the entire board shares similar concerns there. If I'm not speaking for the entire board, somebody can chime in, but I think we have a lot of those same concerns, and I think that's why, as a state, we're further ahead than most people. We can call it alternative planning, we can call it competitive planning. We want to have options, and I don't know that any of us are comfortable with the here, decide, take it or leave it. Oh, and by the way, we'll tell you after you decide whether you're taking it or leaving what it is. I don't know that any of us are comfortable with the, you can choose the black box or the white box, but we're not telling you what's inside, and that's kind of what is being presented to us. And so I think we share your concerns, and that's what we're working towards.
Let's make a deal. Listen to that show.
Very similar.
Discord number one.
So did anybody else on the board want to weigh in or contradict my not so eloquent summary?
I think just to add on to that, Chief, before we go, you know, one of the key things for our state, and I think FirstNet gets this. I don't know they quite know how to solve it, which I don't blame them. It's a challenging problem. In states like ours, where we do have a significant, I mean, a vast majority of our population is very clustered. And when you look at the population and the major highways, that's where a vast majority of the population goes. But we have a significant area that a lot of people go to do other things. You know, when we were actually at up at FirstNet back in January, I pointed out Long Peak's up there. You know, I don't know how many days a year that, you know, Boulder County Search and Rescue is dispatched to Long Peak, but I imagine it's probably quite a few. And, you know, that's one of those areas where you would look at Long Peak and say, oh, you know, a temporary deployable solution is fine on Long Peak. Well, except for the fact that 50, 60, 70 days a year, you've got search and rescue out there on Long's Peak at 12, 13,000 feet, trying to get the idiot that climbed the mountain without hiking boots on off the mountain. You know, those are situations we have to think about. And I think that's one of the things we've been really focusing on is, you know, we really are kind of two states. And we got to solve both of those problems to really be a statewide solution. And even when I put my selfish hat as the state on, and I look at CSP and I look what Don has to deal with, you know, Don's got to go across this entire state. I can't go to Don and say, all right, Don, you know, this troop and this troop and this troop can use it, but the other 4 troops can't use it. That's just not going to work. And so I think that's one of the things that's driving our efforts and our planning.
Yep. Anybody else from the board want to weigh in on those comments under general discussion? All right, if not, let's go over our dates real quick. We're almost out of time.
Yep. So as a reminder, the May 3rd event, we'll send you out the link again. The APCO Broadband Summit is in Washington, D.C., May 16th and 17th, and I believe Carl is going to that. Our governing body meeting on the 19th, the Arvada Center. I do want to share, I meant to mention earlier, we have committed participation from Senator Gardner and Senator Bennett's office. And we are coordinating participation with Perlmutter's office as well. So our elected officials will be in attendance as well as the governor's office proper, and Director Stan Hilke will be there too from Public Safety. So, and then the PSCR conference, which is really a technical conference, we are likely going to make an offer to some of our technical working group folks about cost sharing to attend that conference, and that's to understand all of the R&D that they're doing up in Boulder around public safety communication. So.
Good stuff. Very technical. Very technical.
Perfect. All right. Anybody got anything else before we adjourn? If not, thank you.
Timing. Adjourn.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks, bye.